How much does it start to open a cafe in 2025? Well, if you are curious, you've come to the right place. I'm Haley, I own Hazel Coffee, and we're currently making the transition from a mobile cafe to a brick and mortar in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, of course, I think it's important to note that prices will vary based on your location, but we are at the point where we have all of our expenses laid out, we have the lease signed, everything's agreed upon, we've gotten our quotes from our builders, all of our equipment, all of our plans have been approved by the health department. So I think we have a pretty good idea of what we'll be spending and wanted to kind of share and be transparent with you on that. Now, hopefully I can kind of keep this leveled in a way that makes the most sense, but I do apologize if it's slightly scattered because right now it just feels like money is flying in and out. So I will try to go in order. So the first thing that we spent money on is our contract lawyer. Now, we looked at a lot of spaces. We got to the point of almost signing a lease with about 2 or 3 different spaces. Just didn't work out because of kind of that ending contract just wasn't feeling right, or some things were snuck in there, or in some cases, tenants that were currently in the building decided to stay. So a lot of factors, but when we found this space, we loved it. Our realtor has a lot of experience in owning and operating businesses, and he highly suggested a contract lawyer to us. So we used somebody he referred us to, and the price tag of that does feel pretty steep. And while it felt like a lot, it absolutely paid off in the end. So by the time it was all said and done, our contract lawyer has saved us about $100,000 because of some things he was able to add to the lease and negotiate on our behalf. So while it felt like a big ticket item, it was definitely worth it in the end. Now, I know this is about budgeting, but just to touch on the contract really quickly, he added a lot of things that we maybe wouldn't have thought of, like non-competes, so other people in the building can't be selling or serving the same things that we do. And he added a grace period. So the building that we're moving into is a brand new build. Technically, it was supposed to be done and built by now, and obviously because of delays with the building and the township and things just happen, we weren't able to move in yet. We can't get into the building and start our build until on their end, from their contractors, the building is deemed safe for us to go in, which makes sense. But because the way our lease is worded, we didn't have to start paying rent right on April 1st. So we're not just throwing money away until we're finally able to move in. Our rent doesn't begin until 3 months after the space is turned over to us. Now, the space needs to be turned over to us in the manner that the lease states, which is a white box, which is something I would look into for your specific county or state. There's a lot of regulations usually in what a white box is. So in our case, I know there needs to be lights every couple of feet, outlets every couple of feet, needs to be drywall, fire suppression needs to be ready to go, and the walls need to be primed. So just a couple things that make it a little bit more workable when we move in. Another thing included in our lease, we're in a unique situation where the landlords wanted the space to be a cafe, and they preferred for it to be a locally owned, operated cafe. So we were a good fit, but we were really worried about the cost of all the underground plumbing because we'd have to dig up concrete. If you buy out a space that's already a restaurant or a cafe, or was in the past, it will have these things. But if you're doing a new build, that alone can be $30,000 to $40,000. And so not having to dig up all of that plumbing is going to save us a ton. The landlords agreed to do that because it's a building that they will be owning and keeping, and heaven forbid we have to leave the space at any point. They have all the functionality of a cafe for the next tenant. The last little bit of the lease that I wanted to mention that was also included, which will alter these numbers, is that we got a tenant improvement allowance, or TIA. And what that is it's the landlord's basically giving you a loan. So they're saying, we'll give you X amount of dollars per square foot, and you can use that money to build out this space how you'd like, and we will just increase your rent by X dollars until it's paid back. So our rent will be slightly higher while we're paying that back, and I think it's going to take us about 2 years to fully pay back, and then our rent will go back to normal price. But that was another 20 grand that we have now up front to put into the cafe, and obviously we will pay it back over time, but it's 20 grand less cash that we needed right at the beginning. So sorry to get into contracting, but I like the contract aspect of it, but it is super, super, super important. So our contract lawyer, after all of that is said and done, was $1,100, and obviously well worth the money. The next thing that we spent a good chunk of money on already is our architect. Now, in a lot of states, you will need a licensed architect to do all of the plans that you send to the health department. That's because they're doing everything from the mechanical, electrical, plumbing to show everything is connected right, where it connects, is it city water, where does the waste go, does your power capacity match up to all the equipment. So they printed all of our equipment specs, how much power that will be pulling, and then they obviously had to make sure everything was ADA accessible. So are the walkways the right size, are the counters the right height, every little detail, and then they have scaled plans that need to be sent to the health department, and they are very particular about that scaling. So once we worked with the architect, that total came out to $4,959.78. Now, they did suggest that we use a designer, which would have been an additional hourly fee, but Brian and I felt pretty confident in our ability to get those designs to them and kind of show what our vision was for the space. This was a little more than just being like, we want it this colors, we want this. Brian is really good at making scaled visuals, so he could take that to the architect and they were able to kind of help with that, and they said that the plans were enough to not need the designer, so that saved us a bit of money. From there, another thing we've paid for are the permitting fees. Now, this comes in two different sections. So you have the health department fee, which for us, we spent $670 to get our plans approved, and that's based on square footage for your price. I will say that price has already gone up to $850 since we applied. Usually in Michigan, every April is when kind of like the new health stuff takes effect. So those rates have increased, but for our sake, it was $670. Thankfully, our plans were approved. We didn't need to do any adjustments or anything. They approved everything for the build, as well as all the equipment we were using and all of our standard operating procedures. So we're pretty much good to go. The other section of that is the permitting fees for the build itself. So when you're building something, you need permits pulled legally. So our architect charged us about $300, which is included in that total, to file everything for us through the township website. And then we had to pay $1,120.80 for the permitting itself to say we are good to operate and build in this space. Now, that's a majority of what we have spent so far. We're kind of starting to get into the nitty-gritty of the actual build. I'd say most of what we just went over is kind of the pre-work. Now we're getting into our contractors, what they quoted us, and what we're expecting to pay from this point on. For our cafe, we decided to go what we felt was pretty minimal, basic, but some of our ideas had some pretty steep price tags. So we did want to keep the walls a nice white. Maybe we'll put a mural on them. The floors are concrete. We're pretty into that. So we were just planning on doing like a polished concrete. We're not doing any tiling, backsplash, nothing like that. But we did want to add a soffit above the bar, so that'll drop down a couple feet. The ceilings are really high, so it'll just make it a little warmer, more welcoming. And we want like a nice wood detail behind that, so that has kind of a higher price tag for the woodworking. And then the rest is kind of what you'd expect. Cabinetry. We are adding a little drywall section so that our back of house area is a little bit more closed off. We thankfully are sharing a bathroom with the apartment complex, so we didn't have to do any numbers on what it would cost to build out bathrooms or do that level of plumbing, so we're saving a bit there as well. Now, this is straight from our contractor. We did get 2 quotes. This is the lesser of the 2, so definitely do your research. It's such a pain to have to communicate back and forth with people, and things do take time, but I promise you, the price difference will shock you if you get a couple quotes. So this one, for the polished concrete, we were quoted, so to do the flooring, $8,400. For the plumbing that's not included in the underground work, which keep in mind, that's around $30,000, which part of our lease we don't have to pay, but I would definitely budget for that. So the additional plumbing plus our water heater, which we need per health code, of course, is $11,800. Our countertop and cabinetry install is going to be $16,000. All the electrical work and the fixtures, huge undertaking. We might try to minimize how many lights we have in this space. They look beautiful, but that's coming out to $20,200. And our contractor let us know it's pretty hard to find electricians right now. So great market to get into if you're interested in being an electrician. They're keeping busy. Some paneling for all of the walls, all that wood detail, that's $9,700. The additional drywall work that we would need done, so patching as things are happening, and that kind of extra area that we wanted to go up, is going to be $17,950. So this is our current idea of what we'll be spending on just the build. So this doesn't include the equipment, it doesn't include the sinks or the fixtures. This is just, let's get in there, this is what we are going to build and install for you, and then you take it from there. We're already feeling pretty hot over here. Okay. So for our espresso machine, we could have used the one from the trailer, but it's got some issues. It was kind of a bad refurb. It leaked, and just, it's not something we necessarily wanted to have to pay to keep fixing. So we did find another used one on Facebook Marketplace. We took a tech to see it with us, which I also highly recommend. He was able to take the machine apart, look at things, tell us if he felt it was good. And since he's going to be the one working on it, I feel if he's comfortable, then I'm comfortable. So we ended up spending $9,000 for a La Marzocco. It is a 2-group PB. In great shape. Really excited about that score. It was a random Facebook Marketplace find. But if you aren't able to find something like that, or you're not interested in used, I suggest reaching out to your roaster. They'll typically have some type of relationship with La Marzocco or another trusted machine supplier, and they can help get you potentially a discount or a payment plan on a machine. A lot of the times they can get them powder coated, and I'm sure your roaster would be happy to kind of help walk you through your options, a couple different price tiers, packages, everything. So they'll be able to hook you up, which is what we were gonna do if this machine hadn't popped up. I would likely budget $15,000 to $20,000 based on the machine that you're looking at. If you want a 2-group, which I do recommend in a cafe, because hopefully you will be busy enough to want that extra group head. So our grinder we're looking at is an Anfim, and it's $2,798. We need 2 of them, one for regular, one for decaf. The ice maker is $2,149. Our little ice holder, because you cannot scoop directly from the ice maker. That is against health code. That will be $494. We have a mini fridge, like a small one, that we bought a while ago when we thought we were going to be moving into a space, and then we didn't. So it's just sitting in our guest room, but we already have that. That's going to be our under-counter fridge for like while we're working milks. And then we need to get a stand-up fridge, which is going to be $1,279. Well, that's some of our bigger ticket items. We're also looking into getting a pastry warmer so that we can warm pastries. That's going to be $439. Our pitcher rinser is $330. We need the sinks. So our hand sink will be $75. The 3-compartment sink will be $408. We're going to need a pastry display case, which can vary. And then all the things. So a sugar bar, cups, lids, shelving, so different things for storing cups and all the extras. I'll kind of total that all up somewhere. And then finally we get into furniture. So you would be surprised how expensive chairs and tables and stools are. We have plans for a built-in bench, so that'll be like a part of the woodworking Brian's gonna plan on doing. And then we are going to have like a high top bar that will be built in. We have been checking Facebook Marketplace to try and kind of buy what we can when we find it. We found 2 tabletops that we're gonna try to cut to size and see how those work. Those were $30 each, which was great. We do need to build some legs for it. We've gotten a few things here and there, like a little stand that we're gonna put the dish bin on for like dirty dishes. That was $30. So we're always keeping an eye out. So a lot of the little things add up. We are planning on starting small, and we can always add as we go. Another area that we were able to save money is because we had the trailer, I didn't need to buy things like pitchers or shakers or any of my like bar materials. We don't need like the non-slip or anti-fatigue mats for behind the bar, because we could take those out of the trailer. I'm not sure if I mentioned like latte cups, cappuccino cups, espresso cups. You need those for here and to go. And then you have the startup of all of your milks, etc., 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 beans. I know this was a lot to digest, but generally our build, if we're looking at kind of including those few things that I had mentioned that were worked into our lease, where we were able to save and not having to buy a lot of the things you normally would for starting up, we are looking at around $120,000 for our build to get open. I do think it's important to also note that you'll likely need to put down a security deposit, and as well as first and or last month's rent. So for us, we did put down our initial security deposit, which was $3,007. And then when we get into the space, we'll need to pay our first month's rent, which is $3,007. And we are responsible for CAM fees. It is decently high for rent, but I feel really good about the area and the space and the community here. Like I said, we're super local. We live really close. So really excited to see where this goes. Hopefully a little look into this budget and a couple things to consider will help those of you looking to start something similar. And yeah, this is kind of the total range that we're looking at. Could vary based on your area, but I feel like this is a pretty good place to start. I'm a firm believer in starting small and growing as you go. So if you need to start with maybe equipment you didn't initially plan to start with, or a smaller menu, or tables and chairs that you found on Facebook Marketplace, that is totally fine. I think it's best to be in a place where you're comfortable and grow from there. You can always add. We had a few design elements that would have been an extra 10 to 30 grand based on what they were, that were just little things we thought would be cool, and after seeing them thought like, okay, whoa, we don't need this really cool kind of pointless feature in the cafe. Would be great from a visual element, but $10,000 is $10,000. So don't be afraid to tweak your plans as you go. You can always revisit an idea, come back later. We always love connecting with fellow coffee lovers, people in the industry. So thanks for being here, and feel free to ask any questions you have below. We hope to take you on the journey with us. Cheers.